Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Energy Inside Motion. I'm here today with my guest Wizdom.
Hey.
So if you'd like to just give a little brief introduction about who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Wizdom. I started off as a UK hip hop artist back in the 90s, but have kind of progressed now to artist development and artist management. I was recently running a music education charity called Sound Connections, but I've also worked heavily over the last 4 or 5 years with Mobo, running Mobo Unsung, their artist development program, but I've also been involved in opening schools like Elam, quite a bit in education, and as well artist management.
How did you how did you get into the creative industry when you were younger?
I actually started at school. I was on the student council in year 8, and a couple of friends had said that they wanted a Christmas party, and I suggested this to student council, and they were like, "We'll only do it if you do it." And I was like, "Okay." So at 12, I held my first event. I then DJ'd for the school and stuff, and it was terrifying. And I played Consenting to Outer Space by Prodigy about 3 or 4 times in an hour, and hadn't worked out how to plan out a DJ set, but really enjoyed it and thought this is something I'd like to be involved in. And then a couple of years later, I was in a school play doing Midsummer Night's Dream, and a number of the cast were like, there's this school opening up down the road. We're all going to go and audition for it. And it was Brit School. And I got in with 8 members of my cast. So I was the first intake of year 10. And I was, for the first time, just surrounded by all these incredibly talented people, dancers, singers, actors. Because at the time, they didn't split the strands up. So you got to meet kind of everybody. And was just really inspired by seeing all of these people with all these talents. And at the time, I hadn't really worked out what it was that I wanted to do. I had a real love for hip hop at the time, which now thinking back on it is quite interesting because it was very underground back then. It wasn't something that was really on national radio. You had to go to specialist shops to go and buy it. But it was a real passion for me. And I didn't necessarily go to the school with an idea I was going to be a musician. I just had a passion. And I was actually studying, I think, media, art, and I think it ended up being music technology alongside my GCSEs. And while I was there, I think the BNP got into power somewhere. And it affected me so much. After watching a news report, I went and wrote a rhyme about it and then showed a friend in school who was a couple of years older than me, who was a producer. He was like, we could record this. I was like, okay. So went and recorded it in the school studio. He produced it. And it ended up on the Brit School CD. And from that point, I was a rapper all of a sudden. And then I ended up doing a DJ workshop at my college, which a guy came down to called Watcher, was Jason Bradshaw, I should say at the time, who invited me to come along to like a cypher night that they were holding on a Friday in Clapham. So I went down there and there was just a bunch of guys rapping. Listening to DJ 279, Max and Davey J, and watching Ali McBeal on a Friday night. And then we were put on instrumentals and everyone would just rap. And that was kind of my introduction and how I ended up joining Green Jade. And then I was in that group for 17 years.
Yeah. So who were some of your musical influences?
I think back then, when I first started, it was definitely NWA, in particular Ice Cube, which then progressed into Busta Rhymes, who was part of a group called Leaders of the New School. Jay-Z became big influences probably as I progressed. But yeah, a lot of 1990s, mainly New York East Coast rappers, because I had family on Flatbush in Brooklyn, and there was kind of that connection with that music then, and so much of it was kind of based in New York. There's a lot of similarities between New York and London. And also being from a Caribbean background, a lot of the music was also being driven by Caribbean influences in the US. So we all had cousins who lived in the States. So would invariably go over there and sort of come back in Kangol hats and baggy jeans and Karl Kani and all of these kind of things, which, as I said, now looking back, was a real niche subculture that a lot of people didn't actually even know about in the mid-90s. but I was heavily involved by it and really inspired by it.
How did your upbringing influence your career path and your journey?
So I would say my upbringing is that I am from a family from Barbados. My mum and my dad are from Barbados. My dad passed away when I was 2. He died of cancer when he was 36. I've got an elder sister who kind of left the house when I was 8 because she's 10 years older than me. She went to university. So it was just generally me and my mum. So I didn't really have any male influences in the house. However, and I always find it strange to kind of say, but it also meant that I didn't have any negative male role models either. I never grew up sort of seeing my mum and my dad fighting, or there being another family elsewhere, or him being cussed out or anything. And actually, his pension ended up paying for a lot of my life growing up as a teen. So I had, as a result of my father who provided beyond his life even. So, but I was still a young boy in South London, and we were trying to avoid some of the issues that were going on in South London back then. Specifically, I live in Crystal Palace, which isn't that close to Brixton, but is kind of associated to it. And my school had a gang called the 28s, which had beef with Peckham. So me and my friends, to stay out of it, we used to go into central London where no one used to go at that point in time. So from about the age of 12, 13, we were going around record shops. We were, out of ends, if you like. And it just kind of gave us a little bit of a different view on the world. We also got into anime at the time, which we called manga at the time. And it was like just the three of us. So like nobody else knew about us. No one was talking about anime. It wasn't a conversation. Anyone who would have been considered a nerd back then, but like we were really into it. And sort of like kung fu flicks. And as I said, I had quite a positive upbringing, and me and my mum had the opportunity to be able to travel quite a bit and get around the UK and stuff. And then my best friend went to university in Birmingham, so he was then UCE. So I used to come up here quite a bit. So I've always had kind of an affinity to Birmingham and stuff.
So what was it like creating your first album?
Ooh, so that took a little while actually. It's difficult to really appreciate now how much it used to cost, because now I think I remember we had someone did an investment for us to buy stuff. I think it was 2 days in the studio. That 2 days came to £1,500 in 1998, 97, 98, something along those lines. So that's probably closer to £2,500 now. And you can buy a studio for that now. Do you know what I mean? So it was such a rare thing. So Green Jade started properly in about 1996, 97. And we were performing out. We were, as I said, we'd been a group that'd been, ciphering in Clapham, in the William Bonney estate for a while, but actually going out and doing performances. We also did know quite a few people on the scene. It just wasn't financially viable to record an album. So we were doing performances, building our name, building an audience. This is all pre-digital. So when you're building a mailing list, it meant you physically had to write people's names down, and you had people's home addresses and everything else. So we were kind of building our audience. But then what we worked out is we found someone who had a studio that was willing to do a deal with us so that we could pay him back on the back end if we recorded everything at their studios. So I was studying sound engineering at the time, so I understood a lot more about the kind of industry side of it, and also my experience at Brit School meant that I kind of helped the group pull it all together. It was my first kind of executive production role, really. So we did that in early 2000, 2001, I think it was, that we recorded that. And it was a great process. The guys who were recording were really, really helpful. And by this point in time, because we'd been on the scene for about 4 years, we knew our music and we knew what we were about. We'd actually just taken a break for about a year. before we put the album together. So we were kind of really back and really fresh for it, and that's what produced Chronicles of Story So Far, which was my debut album, which originally came out January 2002.
Okay. How did you create your own, I guess, identity in the music industry?
So we were a Christian-based hip hop group. We kind of straddled both worlds at the time. As I said, we had a lot of friends around that sort of period, which were like Black Twang, Ty, God rest him, and a few other people on the scene. But we were very heavily influenced by Kung Fu, hence the group was called Green Jade, which initially stood for, well, it was originally called the Green Jade Sect, which originally stood for Get Ready, Every Enemy Now. Judgment awaits desolate evil, slowly every clock ticks. Which is a bit deep even for the 1990s. So we shortened it down to Green Jade. And that was kind of representative of green represents recycling, rebirth, and healing. Jade represents something that was knackered or worn out of use, or from the word jaded. So we were the rebirth and rejuvenation of people who were once knackered, essentially. So we had a whole concept. Now that I do artist development, I now understand what we did with having whole concepts around things and having color themes and having logos and stuff like that. And it wasn't something that was a conversation or anyone necessarily taught us, but it was just, we had someone in a group who was really into visual art in Third Sun. So he did a lot of our logos for us and sort of oversaw photography. So we were actually building this brand, especially around the Kung Fu. So each one of our albums starts with a Kung Fu sample. And we got 3 albums. And we'd always had those kind of elements within what we were doing. And trying also not to rip off Wu-Tang, which is all Fushtikins, who also had that kind of background. But yeah, that was kind of our inspiration. So we kind of set a path for us. And also it was still, as it is now, it's still quite odd to have groups. You would often have maybe 1 or 2 people, but to have a group of like 4 or 5 was unusual. So the fact that we did the whole interaction pieces between us when we were doing our performances and covering each other's ad libs and crowd interaction and all of that kind of stuff, and we'd often come on stage from 4 different directions and mess with people and all that kind of thing, which was very much part of the hip hop what we were about. It kind of set us apart for what we were doing, and especially within Christian circles where they never really had that. So I think as well, that was we were in their eyes incredibly radical, and it was a very, very new thing. Now we've got DC3 doing 4.5 million streams a month, and you've had the likes of Faith Child and who else has been there, even Stormzy to some extent, from a gospel rap point of view
as well.
Lecrae in the US, so we knew some of those guys as well. Like that's all happened sort of since, so it's been amazing to see that growth. So that really set us apart as who we were, but it was good for us that we were quite respected within both scenes by sort of the mid 2000s. We were very respected in both scenes, and we'd won a UK Hip Hop Award in 2001, I think it was, and we got nominated for a MOBO in 2008. So yeah, there was a lot going on for us.
Earlier you touched on around you went to Brit School. What was that experience like going through?
First year was incredible. The second year was horrible. At the time it was, so I went for year 10. We were the first intake of year 10. And yeah, it was an amazing place, and no one has been famous yet. So it wasn't like we didn't have this whole, Amy Winehouse came here and Adele came here. It wasn't none of that at that point in time. But I was there at the same time. There was an artist called Lyndon David Hall. God rest him. He passed away a few years ago. He was like 2-3 years above me. And I remember when I went from the open day, his band was performing as part of the open day. The guys from Damage were, I think, a year above me. I think Dre from Damage was. I think I was there at the same time as Morchiba, Imogen Heap, actually was the keyboard player in my jazz funk fusion band. And I saw her for the first time in about 25 years a couple of months ago. And it was quite amazing to sort of catch up with her and the journey that she's been on. But yeah, at that point in time, like there was no like, oh, we're all going to be famous. It was none of that. It was just like, we're just really, really enjoying this. And I really do appreciate, especially now working across the music, the creative industries, having had that opportunity to meet people from different disciplines and see, for example, how passionate dancers are in a world where there's really no work for dancers. And like, it's a really, really difficult thing to get involved in. And seeing the journey that actors kind of take and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, I initially loved that environment, and it has changed since. But I would say the second year became everyone fighting in on each other, because now we've gone through that first year of enjoying it. Now it's like, I've got to get that spot, and that means I need to murder you for it, and I will happily do so. And it just turned into this mad feeding frenzy, which wasn't helped by the fact that I split up with my ex-girlfriend, who then wanted to murder me, and anyone I was near. So that became really, really difficult. The second year of really seeing this whole competition thing kind of kick in, and people who you thought were your friends actually didn't turn out to be. But to be fair, it was a really good training for the music industry, and kind of what you might face and what you might come up against.
No, 100%. What way? I think communication is a really important thing in the industry. What advice would you have for creatives who are learning how to like develop their own communication style with people in the industry?
I would definitely say that the way that you build relationships is key. And I think some people see this differently, and it might also have, my faith might play a role in the way that I see it. But I think that, for want of a better phrase, being a prick is the worst thing that you can be in this industry. And I'll break that down to the point where I had to kind of break that down as to what that means. And I would say that, don't be pompous, rebellious, ignorant. And ignorant doesn't mean ignorant. Someone who's ignorant doesn't know something. Someone who's ignorant don't want to know. And even if you tell them, ain't going to listen. Don't be capricious, which means turn up on time, be reliable. And finally, don't be a knob. Basically. And I find, unfortunately, we're in an industry which attracts people with those kind of traits, partially because you have to have a level of self-belief that's much higher than most people to be able to truly succeed in this thing. And I think that building communities, especially now in the way that the world has changed, you're not going to likely get a Simon Cowell type who's just going to go, we like you, we're just going to spend shed loads of money on making you a star. Like, that just doesn't happen. And even if it does, you are not in control, right? So therefore, it's so important now to be able to build community. And, if you want friends, I think this is a biblical verse that I kind of remember and I always find really powerful. If a man wants friends, he must show himself friendly. And I think if you want to build an audience, because essentially it's your audience who's going to pay for you. They're the people who are going to pay for your mortgage. They're the people who are going to come out and see you. Because I think now we can get blinded by the numbers on social media. And you can have 100,000 followers, but can't get 5 people to come and see you in a venue. And I really do think it's who will turn up for you is a real guide of your success, rather than your social media numbers. Even though they're important, I don't think that they're the be all and end all. And I think building community, building friendships over time, treating people well. We talk a lot about networking, and people think that that's just like going and grabbing people's cards. I'd rather go to a networking event and leave and having had 3 or 4 really good conversations with a person that I could follow up, rather than going around and getting hundreds of people's cards and I don't know who anybody is, or I make people feel like I'm just trying to grab off you. It's like, what have you got to offer as well?
I think you've got to work to really instill the value in yourself as a person first.
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to determine the quality of your interactions as well. Like people people pick up on energies differently.
Yeah.
But I think if people can tell when like you're not like giving something to them, it's just like a one-sided sort of
Yeah.
interaction.
And as I say, with the whole networking thing, I think it's better that you build friendships rather than try and build for numbers. Because, you know, there's been situations of people who I've just got talking to and just got on with, and then found out that they did X, Y, and Z, which I didn't necessarily know. And I wasn't necessarily going to try and build a relationship with them because of what they had access to, but because I genuinely built a friendship and we generally got on, it meant that I had access to whatever they had access to. And those are the best ways of networking, I find.
Like alignment, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think that is, it's really important. And also, like you say, that you work out who you are. Because not every artist in particular is great at those social interactions. But if you're not, work with people who are and defer to them. Do you know what I mean? And take their advice and listen to them. Because if you're not going to listen to them, it becomes a bit sticky. Or you've got to find a way of building some connection. So, like, if I take someone at Chapel Roll, I don't think that that's what she looks like when she goes to Sainsbury's. But it's so consistent in her public persona. You know this character and you're engaged in this character. And I think that that's what artists really need to be able to do.
What advice would you have for artists who are trying to build their own audience?
Start with your niches. I think a friend of mine has a saying that if you try to be everyone's cup of tea, you end up a mug. So start with who are the people that I'm immediately around. And this kind of goes back to what you're saying about knowing yourself.
Right.
And I think this is also a reason in my head why I find artists now are becoming successful slightly later. There used to be the whole Britney Spears world where someone would kind of blow up and be huge when they were 18. But it's harder to do that now because so much of your brand is built on who you are, and it's much harder to kind of slap a brand on an artist and say, well, you just be that, because social media doesn't really allow that to work that way anymore. So I think it's really important that you know who you are, because that's from where your brand kind of comes out. Wanting to build your own brand and building your own fan base has kind of got to come off of, right, I like anime. Who else likes anime? I like motorcycles. Who else likes motorcycles? I'm a Liverpool supporter. Who else is a Liverpool supporter? Like, how do I get involved in these groups that associate with the things that are important to me? Because if they're important to me, they're likely to be important to other people within these groups. And if I can grow small fan bases that then can grow, it means that wherever you go in the world, you know those type of people who are likely to like what you like, because there will be people in anime in Japan, France, the US, all over. And you can, especially now because we've got access to the internet, we can tap into those smaller communities of people. And this is, again, where you have to be genuine, because it has to be something you're actually interested in. And then you grow by being involved and genuinely go to the events, genuinely be involved in it. And you will find that the people who are promoting in those worlds are much more likely to want to give you an opportunity. And if you spend time focusing on those smaller groups, or for example, when you put out a song or you put out a post and you find someone continually keeps commenting, put them in a little folder that if you've got something new that you'll DM them directly, or get their details and you'll give them a ring and say, oh, thank you for supporting this. Here's a new song. Tell me what you think. That's how you build an audience from a small base and then kind of grow it. It takes time. I definitely say it takes about 2 years if you're focused on it. But that is the way I've seen the best way to be able to really develop an audience that will stay with you.
They do as well on Instagram. You can have like your own channel as well.
Yes.
That's something that I've seen where you can have like multiple, like as many members as you want in there, and you can just like give updates and stuff.
Yeah, I like those as an opportunity. However, I would definitely say if you can get people off those platforms, as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
the better it is. If you kind of see your Spotify's, your Instagrams, TikToks as the top of your funnel, if you can get them into a mailing list that you can control, because the reality is it only takes for you to get hacked once and that's it. Like you can lose your entire fan base. We had at the beginning of last year, TikTok went down in the US. Like these things, it's possible for them to disappear. So if you build everything on that, so even like now where, people are expressing their concerns around Spotify and things that Daniel Ek has invested in, if everyone decides to pull off Spotify, the fact that you've got 100 million monthly listeners disappears overnight. And so you have to find other ways that you can control that audience and not just depend upon them being on social media platforms, because they can change at any point.
How important do you think it is for creatives to learn how to adapt and pivot in the industry?
I think that is essentially what being a creative is. I think that COVID was a really great example of, we came into, so COVID hit in March and everyone had their tours and everything else all sorted. So all the conversations with all of my friendship group was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to make a living. By June, nearly everyone I knew had something, whether that was Deliveroo or whatever it was. That was the ability to be able to adapt. And I think that kind of really shows where you are as a creative. I think it's about how you're able to adapt to different circumstances and, this is coming now. And, so we're going to have to do this slightly differently in this way. And I think that's the reason why, for me, I'm not as scared as I feel a lot of people are about AI and the changes that are kind of come in, because it's like, okay, it's another thing to adapt to. It used to be a case, for example, that an album was 74 minutes long because that was the length of a CD. That's how much you could fit on a CD easily. So everyone made albums that length.
Like value for your money.
Yeah.
As well.
But then before that, an album might be half an hour long because you could get 15 quality minutes on two sides of vinyl. And you adapt to the circumstances. And I think that's what we have to do as creators.
What is a moment in your journey where you had to pivot or you had to adapt?
I think one of the biggest times that I had to pivot was when the group kind of came to an end. Well, actually, no, that was one. Actually, I think the biggest moment I had to pivot initially was when one of the members of the group got divorced, because that was like, he's going through something personal. We've all been in a group. We know both sides of the situation. Like, what are we going to do? He wasn't in the greatest of places at the time. So we had to find another way. How are we going to do this? How are we going to move forward? And that was when we kind of made it wasn't simply that, but it made sense that we did a lot more of our focus on our schools work.
Yeah.
And that's when we started the Guns Down Schools tour with XLP, and we're going into schools and doing things around gun and knife crime that we did for about 5 years. So that was kind of like, oh, okay, this is a difficult situation, but we need to do this slightly differently now. And also, we're getting older, we've got kids, we've got responsibilities and various other bits and pieces. How can we make this work? And it's also, as I said, we were doing UK hip hop in a time where grime was really growing as an influence, and we're having to make the decision, like, do we continue as a UK hip hop group, or are we trying to move with the times, as it were? And it wasn't right for us because it wasn't our influence or our interest. So it made more sense to stick with what we were doing, but find other ways by which to express it.
How did you get into doing youth work, and I guess transitioning from being an artist to then mentoring and helping creating?
So that I would say would be the second time I really had to pivot. So the group came to an end in 2010, which was really difficult for me because I was the youngest member of the group. So I'd been in the group for like 16 years. So effectively my entire adult life had been in that kind of context. So it was really, really difficult. And I understood the reasons why we came to an end, and it was all very amicable. We did a final album to get rid of all of the music that we kind of had sitting on hard drives, to make sure that it was all out of our system to some extent. And what happened for me was the charity XLP that we'd done the anti-gun crimes tour with offered me a job of running their arts, as the group kind of came to an end. And I really enjoyed sort of working with young people and hearing their stories and talking to them from the schools work that we've done. So I wouldn't have considered myself a youth worker. I used to consider myself as kind of an industry guy who gets on with kids, essentially. So I brought that point of view to the charity, and we were doing showcases, but they weren't really going anywhere. So I kind of wanted, once we'd done a show and someone had performed, I wanted to offer them the opportunity to do more and find out where their passions were, and because I had my industry hat on of, well, this might be how you could do it and take it further. And it also was an opportunity for me to work out, why had we not been successful? Because I wanted to see what were the things that we didn't know, that if I could help empower the next generation, they could get a bit further than we did. Because we were good, but at the time, we didn't really fully understand things like branding and building audience bases. And especially for us, as I said, our career spanned the changeover from analog to digital. So, we had a MySpace, but we didn't really know how to use it. We'd put stuff up on YouTube, but at a time where there wasn't a lot of views on YouTube. So it was sort of then seeing how can I teach and give this knowledge and understanding that if you want to take this seriously, these are the things that you need to consider, and these are the things that you need to work on. And that we had some successes with that, both in music and beyond. I suppose one of the young people that I had the privilege of meeting very young was Lola Young, who had a #1 with Messi this year, and our involvement with her was, she was on our showcase, and I took her to see Alicia Cara, who did the song Here, at the Brixton Electric, and she was 21 at the time, and I think Lola was about 14. And I remember driving Lola home, and Lola was like, I can do that. She's only 7 years older than me. I can get to that level. I can do that. And I was like, absolutely, you can. And she went on her own journey and did open mics and continued her writing. I had the opportunity to take her to her first festival where she performed, which was Greenbelt Festival. And then like 2 years ago, I had the privilege of being able to see her at Glastonbury and sort of see that development happen. And, that was an amazing thing for me as both a youth worker and someone who was trying to help develop talent, to be able to see that kind of progression.
And I think also learning to separate your emotions from, which is hard to do.
Yeah, I mean,
It's hard to do, but I think learning to be like stoic and unreactive, I think that's something that can sell.
It helps, but it's music and the creative is emotional, and as much as we do want to be like, yeah, but this is strictly business, you can't necessarily detach the two. I had a lyric that I said once, which was, I'd rather love you hard for a month than a bad marriage. Right? I'd rather this interaction between us works well for this period of time than me trying to extend it forever and we end up hating each other. And I think it's about, for me, it's become trying to work out what that is as soon as possible. Trying to communicate what my boundaries are and why I think we should be doing this instead of this. And giving the person time. And then realizing that if they don't get it and they don't see it, that's cool. I don't need to beef with you because we view something different. And I think, from a wider context, that's kind of an issue we have in the world at the moment, where it's just like, because I view something different, I hate you. Not at all. We just disagree. And it's cool for us to disagree, because if you really believe in that and I don't really believe in that, there's no point me faking that I believe in that to just be around you. It's just prove yourself right. Do what you need to do for you and enjoy it. And whatever comes out of it, you can be happy with. Because the other side of it, I've seen people try and push people into things that have become successful that they didn't like. I remember, I think it was Labyrinth talked about that. And it was him having fights with Simon Cowell about what songs to put out, and then they would go with the one that the record label would say, and it would be successful. And he would have been like, I really don't like that song. I really don't want us to do it, but it works. Like, what do I do now that it's worked? And I think it's important that you, as an artist, can stand on what it is that you want to do. But also, for me, as both a mentor, as a manager, I want to be able to be like, yeah, I've done my job in the way that I understand is best to get the outcome that we had initially both agreed.
Definitely. What would you say is the best way for an artist to get somebody to invest in them and what they do?
So I think the best way to get investment is to be investable. And what I mean by that is, and this is sometimes, it can sound off, so excuse me, and because I am coming from a business point of view. People don't generally give money to the poor, right? Wealthy people, because it's often not a good investment. Which is weird, because then they would spend loads of money on an investment that might not work out. But the reason behind that is the investment is made in the potential for someone to achieve something, which usually comes with a level of evidence that you have the ability to be able to do it. Right? Just saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be the biggest artist in the world, give me some money. What evidence have you got that proves that? What can I base that upon? Whose opinion is that coming from? What have you shown? Where is the effort that you've put in? Where's the music videos that you've made? Where's the investment that you've made in your own website? Or where's the, where's the album? Where's the what have you done in the space in time that you can do to show me that this is a brand that has any legs to it? Because your opinion or the opinion of your mates doesn't mean that this is likely to be successful. So I think it's really important to be able to show what it is that you have. It's far easier if someone goes, right, I need to pay $3,000 for something and I don't have the money, but I've got $1,000 because I've worked for that. I just couldn't make it the whole way. To go, cool, all right, I've got some money. I'll put $2,000 on that and we'll figure out a way that you can pay me back because you're willing to make this investment as well, rather than someone going, rah, I've got $3,000, bro, can you lend me?
Yeah.
It's like, well, are you doing anything for it? Nah, man, I just need the money though. Hopefully I'll get it back to you. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's about, are you investable? Am I seeing an effort that you make in life in general? That you're just in difficult circumstances that won't allow you to do this, and I can come and support it. And or are you just like, I'm talented, innit? What? Like, nah. The problem is, there's loads of talent.
Yeah, because everyone believes that.
Yeah. Talent is not something that is that difficult to find to a certain level. Talent that can reproduce what it does on a regular basis and communicate well and be consistent, that's a whole different thing.
I think being able to showcase an actual strategy or a plan. How do you suggest that artists find a way to make themselves presentable to a music industry person, to show them something like a plan, or to make it so that said person would invest in them?
As I say, I think with the Mobile Unsung project, for example, I wanted to aim that at artists who were slightly further on down the line and weren't emerging artists. But I think a lot of time we focus on the new and don't support those trying to establish. So that's where I wanted to focus Mobile Unsung at. So I needed people to show, well, I've at least put 2 songs out. I've maybe invested in a music video. I've got some idea of what my branding will look like. You know, I don't need you to have done hundreds of thousands of people or even thousands on your Instagram, but I just need to look on your Instagram and go, okay, you're an artist. I can see that. I can see that you've thought about things, that you've got an idea that you're trying to communicate and stuff. Because once that is spinning, then it's easier for me to add to it. And that is the thing that I think that people need to understand beyond talent now is what have you got going for yourself? As I said before, like what is the evidence that you have that shows that this is something that you're actually involved in? So for example, with you, for example, right? You had to get up and just start filming people. Once you've done that, maybe you go, oh, okay, then maybe I need a little bit more money so I can get a nicer studio or a different camera, or there's somebody else who can help me with the edits, or there's other bits and pieces. And once I've seen you do that and you've got a format, then I can be like, oh yeah, well, I'll come because I can see that you're actually doing this thing, you know? You probably would have started with the people around you first, and then you've got evidence of the fact that this is what you do. These are the kind of conversations, and then it builds
a lot of faith.
and a lot of faith stuff. Exactly,
A lot of faith.
and that's what I think is needed, and that's what allows other people to go, okay, I see what you're doing. I believe in it, and I'll come and support it. But if you're literally just there, like, palleted, innit?
Yeah.
No, bro. Like, I don't business.
I think you've got to be able. I think what's important for people is like you have to consider yourself like, what am I adding to this person? Because I think, yeah, you've got to make yourself valuable independently so that people can see your authenticity.
Yes.
And then you just decide from that, okay, what does my authenticity add to this person?
Yeah.
Like, what value are they going to get out of that?
Yeah.
Because I think it determines as well. I think perception as well it determines a lot.
Yeah, and also what I realise is most people are selfish. You know, if you can find a way that something that you're doing aligns with something that they need, you're much more likely to get buy-in than just being able to say to someone, I want this. Can you do this for me? You know, and I think that that's a big part of it. But again, that goes down to relationships. Yeah.
Something I want to, so obviously you do mobile and sung. I want to know a bit more is how did you get into mobile and sung, and what would you say the main purpose of mobile and sung is?
Well, Mobo had been running the Unsung program since 2014, and it was much more of a kind of X Factor type thing, where they would have one winner that they would then kind of support for a year. But after 2020 and George Floyd and the Black Squares, I kind of felt like, you know what, Mobo is the biggest Black British brand for music. And I think that there is more that we could do with this for the community. So I approached Mobo with that. They were also looking to change it slightly. So again, there was that alignment. So we moved it from being one winner to finding 10 artists that could support one another, who weren't in direct competition with one another. And that was kind of key. So that we could give them a foundation for them to take on after the year. So it was just making sure that we'd filled all the gaps of their knowledge in, so that they had an understanding of how the music industry worked, how their creativity worked, legal understandings as well. So that's the baseline, and then you move from there and want to make sure that they get access to things like festivals and larger performances, because for a lot of Black music in particular, the larger promoters don't do Black music shows. So if you're a rock band, you can be playing in a pub and find yourself on Glastonbury because that pub is owned by Live Nation. Whereas for a lot of Black music, it isn't. We're not in the Live Nation, AEG Live world. So they don't see us as artists. And we've got no evidence to show them how good we are because we're not playing their venues or events that they put on. So Mobo gave us the platform to be able to be like, well, actually, let's get you on at the Great Escape. Let's get you on at South by Southwest London. You know, let's do private shows for industry to come and see you so that they know that you exist. They know what you can do, and we can develop a relationship so that you can go on and do further things. And I think that that's, you know, that, and then helping people record and getting into the world of songwriting and songwriting camps. You know, making sure that they know all of the fundamentals so that when they finish the program, they've got a basis to kind of build from and a community of other artists around them. So, from that, sort of seeing the success of Jordan Elatunji as an example, and the fact that he's still linked in to some of the guys from his year, that's fantastic. It's not just that he's gone off and done his thing, which is amazing. It's the fact that there is a community around him to support him in his thing, and his success inspires everybody else's.
So in terms, I feel like community is really the main thing, being able to build community. What advice would you have for creatives who are trying to build more in their community?
As I say, if you want to build your community, start with the people around you who, both from a geographic point of view, but also from a mindset and interest point of view. I think that that's your key. It isn't necessarily your friends and family. I think I heard someone say that your customers will become your friends quicker than your friends will become your customers. So don't hate on the fact that how comes you ain't ever coming to my gigs or liking my pictures and blah blah, because they might see you different. They see you as a person, and you need your fan base to kind of see you as the artist. And they're like, yeah, but we were in Tesco's together and you weren't really an artist then. You know what I mean? Like, so they have a different relationship with you. So don't be offended by that. But yeah, that's how I think start with the community around you. Start with a community of people who have similar interests and build from there. And as I said, I think it takes roughly about 2 years of consistent, not just posting, but being involved in stuff to really make an impact that's enough to kind of get you on the verge of breakthrough. I think it takes at least 2 years.
Something I wanted to ask you about songwriting. So obviously, you write your own music yourself. What advice would you have for artists who are trying to improve at songwriting?
It's a good question, actually. I think now a lot of songwriting is being done in camps. And I think it's important to try and see if you can get into a camp of some sort. And what songwriting camp is generally people have been given a brief either by an artist or by a music supervisor to write a song around an idea. More often than not, the songs that are successful are not the ones that are specifically made exactly like the way they've been written. It's about being able to take that vibe and turn it into something. But it's important to be able, I think, to be able to work with other writers, grow your confidence in being able to put forward your ideas, and be able to take critique and feedback. And sometimes you don't have the best line. Sometimes you might be better at the hook than you are at the melody, and knowing where you fit and what it is that you can kind of contribute. But essentially, songwriting is about communicating through melody and words, emotions and feelings. So I think that there's four kind of key areas of that, which I would describe as you want to be able to make people react emotionally in four areas. So you want them to be able to listen to your song and feel like they want to fight, fuck, cry, or dance. Right? Those are kind of your four outputs as a songwriter you're trying to get. And when I say dance, I don't mean that as dance music. I mean that as when the Macarena plays, people do the dance. When Candy comes on, people do the dance because there's something about it. I think Amo Piano is a really good one for that, for example. It was like, if you know Amo Piano, there's dances attached to nearly all of the songs. So you immediately do the dance and it makes you react in that way. And I think it's, reggae used to, ragga and dancehall used to do that a lot as well. So it's about understanding those emotions. The cry emotion is about, the help, helping you through sad times and difficulties and stuff like that, and knowing that that's okay. The fight is wanting to stand up for something, and I think your songwriting should be able to attach or do something with those four emotions. Because if you can gender and emote, if you can get someone to emote in a world where there's so much noise, I think that's a real talent.
what I wanted to sort of link that into is, I guess, streaming, because I think streaming sort of impacts the way that people create art. So, what advice would you have for artists who are trying to create their art, but obviously, they've got streaming in mind as well?
There's a lot of negativity around streaming because I think that there is this misunderstanding that streaming has replaced HMV. It hasn't. It's replaced radio. All right. The difference is now we can, on demand, at any point in time, get any piece of music. The problem with that is there's just so much music. We are in a world where around 85 to 120,000 songs get uploaded to DSPs every day. About 18% of those now are AI. So, and something like 80% of songs on DSPs have less than 1,000 streams. 80%. That's a hell of a lot of music, and it's only getting more and more and more and more. So it's about how you stand out. What have you done to make sure that people can hear what you're doing? So in the same sense of, you can be on a radio station at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's a limited amount of people who are going to hear you at 3 o'clock in the morning. What are you going to do to get your song on drive time? Is it exactly the same thing as, yes, your song is out, but you're not in any playlist that people are going to hear. You're not promoting it for people to engage in it. You're not utilizing the sound on different social media platforms. What have you done to make people hear it? Because in any industry, in anything, regardless of the product, you kind of have to make the public aware. There's lots of things in Sainsbury's that you might not buy. They're on the shop. They're on the shelves. But you ain't got no interest in them until someone comes and says to you, tried those curly bites. They were really great. It's like, okay, I might go and try some curly bites. Ooh, I like curly bites. I'll tell someone else about it. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same thing. People are like, oh, I've got it in the shop. Yeah, cool. Now what? And it is that you have to think of it. And I think that the challenge is that now, to be successful as a musician or as an artist, you have to have the business side as well. And not every artist is great at that. Like, be honest about it. But then that means that you might need to bring other people on, which means you might need to share, which again goes back to not being a prick, because then you'll find that very, very difficult. And that's kind of the way that it all sort of works now. So it's not just about, getting your stuff out. It's about now, what do we do with it? And that often requires team.
Obviously, you've been working in the creative industry for a long time. How has that affected your family life?
That's an interesting question. Family and the creative industries is something that kind of needs to be navigated. I would say, firstly, I had to let go of this concept of balance. And a lot of people are like, you got balance this and balance that. And it's like, what that said to me in my mind is I need to do exactly the same amount I'm doing here as I'm doing over here. And I found that wasn't something I could possibly do. And it was really, really difficult because, that's what people expect. And what I found much more useful for me was the concept of harmony, was that you have this main melodic line that kind of runs through your life. And every now and again, you'll have other parts that join this melodic line that, if they were on their own, would seem off key. But because you're doing it alongside the other things that you're doing, they all work together. And every now and again, you'll have a ooh that needs to come somewhere, and that adds to the overall sound of this harmony throughout your life. And all of these parts are not necessarily equal, but they all have an importance to make the sound that you want. And it also means that if something comes in that's off key and doesn't fit with everything else you're doing, maybe that's not the right thing to bring into your life. So I found that a really useful way forward as a creative. So within my melody is my family life, which I've worked out which parts I put boundaries around, what I keep separate. Because I think when I was younger, I put everything into it without necessarily understanding how much my wife was also investing in what we were doing. So when the band came to an end, I thought it was just my problem. Well, actually, my missus has now put 10 years of her own life into the hopes and dreams that I've set up, and I've said, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do with the money, and this is what we're going to do with our time. And now that's failed. That's also a grieving process for her. And, she really helped me understand sort of the challenges that I was putting on the family. And, when we had kids and stuff like that, you couldn't spend every night out. You're going to have to work out how you do and sort out your time. So there was a point where I was temping and I would work 9 to 5 effectively, come home, have dinner with her and the kids, put the kids to bed, go to bed with my missus, wait for her to fall asleep, sneak out of the house, go to the studio for 4 hours until about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, come back, get into bed so it looked to my missus like I'd been in bed the entire night, then get up, go work in the morning, take the kids to school, go work in the morning. And I was doing that to finish off the album, and it was a lot, but I managed to get the harmonies to kind of work. And that was a learning process. But then I think even within all of that, it still caused challenges. And I remember, especially as I say, I'm a person who's got a heart to give. And I think sometimes my faith puts me in a position where I kind of really want to give more than necessarily I should. I learned something as well, that sacrifice should only really be for a short period of time. Otherwise, it can turn into abuse. So denying yourself time to do things might be cool for a little bit, but if you keep doing that, you kind of end up abusing yourself. And within all that I was doing, so yeah, things look successful on the outside, and we're doing shows in, opening the Olympics in 2004 and opening for Jay-Z, and we're doing all of these bits and pieces, but it wasn't really bringing any finance in. And I had an argument with my missus, and she was like, okay, name one thing in this house that Green Jade has paid for. I'll wait. And I was like, I can't. I spent all of this time out. None of what I'm doing is benefiting my family. Like, how can I redress that balance? And I genuinely didn't see it. And it happened to be a week that we were recording. And as a result, I kind of went into the studio. We had a song called Music. And I said to the guys, right, when I say at the beginning of this verse, I wrote this morning, I mean this morning. And my verse was, I had a finance meeting with my wife this morning, said the guns down meetings was affecting the mortgage. Because I work a temp job, if I ain't there, then I don't get paid and the bank don't care that I'm trying to make a difference on the talents that I have. But if I miss my direct debits, then I'm losing my pad. My day job is making me sad. And if I don't do 40 hours a week, my wife will be mad. The other guys have got permanent jobs and I don't. And in her eyes, I do stuff that they won't. But I'm trying to make a living on the promise of God. But I need this to make money because I'm sick of my job. That verse became like my North Star to some extent. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I don't mind putting stuff into this. I don't mind putting energy into it, but I've got to make sure that what I'm doing benefits my family at home in some way. It's not just about the money. It's been like, sometimes I've had relationships that have come off the music that have meant that it's given me access to a holiday home for me to go and take my missus away to, or, I've got free tickets, free meals at restaurants because I've done performances for them and various other things, and I can take my missus and she, or there's things that I can go and do with the family because of the relationships that I've had, and that's how I try to make sure that what I'm doing benefits my family and doesn't take away. Like, me talking about that Lola Young, taking her to a festival, I used to take my son with me. So, he's grown up going to festivals and these sort of things because I had these kind of access. So I'm trying to always make sure that what I'm doing is beneficial to both me and the people that I care about around me and can open doors for them.
Something that I want to touch on is around performances. So what do you feel like makes a really high quality artist performance?
Yeah, I think performing for me is key. Again, going back to Mobile One Sung, we have the finals are live performance. We would have looked at all your socials and listened to your music by that point in time. But the difference when someone stands in front of you, I think is huge. And again, it comes down to, can this person in front of me generate and connect with me emotionally? And I think that that's really, really important. And I think it takes time to work out how to do that. The challenge that we have is, especially for younger audiences, a lot of them are interacting with music via social media platforms. And we've got a lot of now successful up and coming artists on platforms like TikTok that haven't learned how to do it live. And they can be a really big name, and they'll have one song that's a hit and everyone goes crazy when that's played. But like the other songs that they have, they don't know how to perform. So like everyone just sort of stands there and goes, well, I was only really here for the one song. And it's like, you need to be able to use that one song that's maybe gone viral to introduce people into your world and connect with them on stage. And I've had a problem with, especially as I say, I'm 1990s hip hop. That was all about stage interaction and getting crowds going and stuff. And I've always had an issue with kind of UK rap as a whole because I don't find that they perform very well. I find it and like it's like, bro, please do something. At least make eye contact. Do something. Bring something out of the song or something like that. Or I just can't get over this whole rapping over the lyrics thing. It's just like, to me, I just don't think that that is a performance. I want more than that when I come and see you live. I want to be moved because I've been in situations where I've seen a band that I didn't expect to, and it's changed my life. Strangely enough, here in Birmingham, many years ago, I saw basically one of the best performances I've ever seen of my life at Custard Factory. So a couple of friends of mine who were in a group called Michaelis Constant were opening for Farside, who were coming from the US. So they'd always supported us. So me and my friend, when we want to have a members of the group, we're like, you know what, let's jump in a car. We'll just drive up to Brum, surprise them, go and see them at their show because it was quite a big thing for them to be opening for Farside. So we saw our guys perform, and then the announcer came on and was like, right, the next group is from France. They only rap in French, but I've seen them in the sound check and I think you'll really enjoy it. And the group was called Science Super Crew. And they had a 45-minute set. That 45 minutes was the most incredible 45 minutes of my life, right? I didn't know a word. I didn't understand French, but the way that they interacted with the audience, they only had one member who spoke English, but like the way that they did their performances, the beatbox that they incorporated, the way that they would do their ad-libs and everything. Me and a mate from the group afterwards drove home from Birmingham and didn't speak to each other the entire 3 hours. We're like, we just need to practice. We called a practice the next day and then tried to replicate what we had seen. And that became the basis of our performance moving onwards. And it's like that one performance literally changed my life. And like the power that had. And I think, if you can perform well, if you can connect with an audience, they managed to connect with us over the boundaries of language, over the boundaries of distance, because they were just so good. And I think striving for that level of excellence in a performance, which doesn't necessarily always mean that you're running around stage. It just means about your ability to connect. I know I remember seeing U2 doing this thing where for one song, Bono will go to an individual in the crowd and just sing the entire song to that one person. And it's like what it does for that one person, they're having this amazing experience. And then for the 90,000 other people in the arena, they're like all wishing they were the one person having that experience. And it brings everybody into it. And I think stagecraft, how you move, your ability to have presence, all of these things are so important, especially if you want to be able to move this into a long-term point of view. There is a reason that people are still going and watching the Rolling Stones in their 80s. Do you know what I mean? Like because they've learned how to rock a show even in their 80s. And I think that it is about that sometimes the music can fade and the memory of it, and maybe you're not making the best new music anymore, but like because you can rock a show, people will spend their money to come out of their houses, and it's becoming more and more expensive to come out of your house. So you got to make sure if someone's coming out of the house, they're coming out for a reason.
100%. As an artist, how do you feel an artist maintains longevity?
Oh, think about how I answer that. I think maintaining longevity is really comes down to knowing your why. Why are you doing this? Because there might be a thing that you're dreaming about. And if that happens in year 2, what are you doing for year 35? Like, you know? And I find sometimes success is a weird thing. I feel like we're more used to dealing with failure as human beings, right? Because we've had that emotion and we've done it. Sometimes when things go well, you don't really know what to do next. You don't know how to feel. Everyone else around you is like, oh, this is amazing and this is great. And you're like, yeah, what do I do with this? It doesn't feel the way I thought it was going to feel. So I think it's about being able to ride those things and understanding what the things, why are we doing this? Why am I sitting in a tour bus going from place to place being knackered? Like, why am I doing that? What is the driver behind that? I think that's really important to know. Is it just for my ego? Is it because I've got something that I want to share? Is it because it just makes me money? Is it, whatever those reasons are, as long as you know it, I think that those are the things that once you know and you are willing to keep those going, then that's the thing that allows you to have longevity. Recently, the female rapper, has announced that she's leaving music and she's starting I think a cleaning business. And she was saying that it's because someone had told her, keep doing the thing until it stops being fun. And she's got to a place where it's just not any fun anymore. And I think that's a really good reason to be able to stop. And I know I was in my group for 15, 16 years. We were never full-time. Never can say that we made bare money out of it. But but the things that I miss now are driving to a show with one another and cracking jokes. Or even better, the way home, once we've done everything that we're supposed to, and I'm around these group of friends who all had this experience together that nobody else has ever had. Like, those are the kind of things that I really, really miss. So I think the whole longevity thing is just about, why do you want to do this? What keeps you motivated? I think money is a big part of that, because you've got to find ways to allow it to pay for itself. Or if it's not going to pay for itself, how are you going to afford it? Going back to what I was saying about family before, what are the commitments that you have that might limit your ability to be able to do this? Those are the things you need to think about. But I think if you've got a solid team behind you and a good reason why you want to keep going and keep doing this, those are the things that really help longevity.
100%. Just change it a little bit. I feel like, so obviously you're a father. As a father, what are the things that you want your children to learn the most from you, you passing down your experience to them and just them seeing you as a person in general?
That's a really great question. It's funny. So my son, who's now 18, his passion is football. And it's a strange thing that because he's grown up in the industry, he's effectively got all the industry contacts he could ever want. And he's not interested in doing music. He wants to do football. And what I've been hoping to be able to show him is just the consistency of the belief in the thing that you're doing, in the fact that it's what you do behind closed doors that people don't see that really makes a difference. It's the attitude that you bring to it. Like, you may not be Messi, but as a Liverpool fan, Jordan Henderson was one of our best captains. Like, he's not the most amazing looking player, but what he added to the team, we didn't even realise until he left. Especially getting beat by Brentford. Anyway, sorry, it's my issues. But yeah, like, it was, and I wanted to be able to encourage him that, and I remember this when he went for his trial at his academy. The guy at the end of the first day when he went for his trial came up to me and went, "Is that your son?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Oh, he was great." Came up, introduced himself, spoke to all the members of the team, got everybody to introduce themselves to themselves and blah, 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 blah. Really loved his attitude, all of those sorts of things. And I was so proud of him because the football is only something he can affect. That's him. That's, you've got to do the work on it. But being a person is something that he's seen from being around me, and he's been able to incorporate that. So as a father, I think that, you know, I find a lot of your parenting, especially when your kids are younger, is they mirror your behavior. And I grew up from a Caribbean background where we often used to say, "It's not what I say. Don't look at what I do. Do as I say." And I completely disagree with that. I think your children mirror your actions, and how you behave behind closed doors is how they're going to view the world. And I'm really proud of the fact that and even hearing from him, what he's seen me be like behind closed doors is who I represent. I am in front, outside of the house. So yeah, that's, I suppose, a really big thing for me.
It's been an episode of Energy Inside Motion with my guest Wizdom.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for
You're
coming
welcome,
through.
man. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate the wisdom.
For myself, one of the challenges has actually been that I am quite an open person that really wants other people to do well. And I think that, unfortunately, sometimes that can be taken advantage of. But I think what I've chosen to do is put myself in a position where I am not financially dependent upon the success of people that I work with. I found other ways so my income can be sorted, so that, because I find, especially at the developmental level, and specifically I find between the ages of 18 and 22, if you've come on as like a mentor when someone's sort of 16, the way they see you and view you between becoming an adult is really, really different. And it can be really difficult to manage that relationship, especially when finance comes into it. When they're like, "Well, what did you really do? I didn't really see you do anything. All you did was make some phone calls." And it's like, no, I was a person making sure you got out of bed. That it was when you messed up in a room, I cleaned it up so that people didn't think badly of you. I was there doing all of these bits and pieces that maybe you didn't see or weren't even aware were necessary for this to have. And I think that it is a difficult thing coming from a place of a mentoring space, knowing that an artist's behavior is going to hurt them in the long run. Because what I find is there's a really big difference between getting through the door and staying in the room. There's an awful lot of artists whose talent will get them in the door. And I remember being told this when I was younger: never let your talent take you where your character can't keep you. And we have so many one-hit wonders because you get to a place where, even as I think there's levels. I think that there's like emerging artists is one level, and then there is breakthrough artists, and then you get into things being like a genre leader, right? You can't behave the same way as an emerging artist as you do as a breakthrough artist, as a genre leader. There's certain things that you can and cannot do. And I think there's an awful lot of emerging artists who think that they're international stars, and they're not. And no, not just because you've put something out, it doesn't mean that might be good, doesn't mean that One Extra are necessarily going to put that as their main track. There might be a conversation that happens behind that. The other people that might have come out will also have good tunes. They're going to look and go, well, this person's been in contact with me the whole way through. And as much as this tune is great, I'd rather go with them because I know that they're a really nice person. I enjoy working with them. I'm happy to see them on a stage with me. And you've got to be able to put in that side of it as well, because this is a people business. And now I say that, and I know that there are some arseholes who really get away with it, right? Usually because they've got the money to back it. I think that sometimes covers a lot. But I think if you're not in that position, like, it's really important that you treat people well. And it's taken me a long time to get to a point where it's like, you know what? I hear that this is what you want to do. You do you, right? I'll take this so far, but I'm not wholly dependent upon the fact that this whole journey was with me. Like, as I said, I mentioned Lola earlier. I wasn't responsible for her success at all. I'm not going to try and stand here and say that I was. She worked really, really hard and worked on some really great relationships. But I'll see her now and she recognizes me as being someone who was there at the beginning. And that was my role. And I've become comfortable within that being my role. I don't need to have a percentage because I took her to her first festival. I'm just glad that she's now doing Glastonbury. And I think for me, it has been having to work out what my role is and what boundaries I put in. And now I'm much better at the beginning of being able to say to someone, right, okay, you're at this point. I think I can take you to this point, but I need you to behave in this way. And if I see things that I don't like, all right, cool, you do you.
So something I've realised as well is like sometimes you're only meant to play a role in someone's life to like spark something,
Yeah.
or just for a certain amount of time. I think learning to detach from people when they no longer align with you, I think that's one of the most important
It
things.
is so crucially important. It is so crucially important and difficult. But it's not everything is forever, you know? And as I said, because I am not putting all my financial hopes on, oh yeah, we're gonna ride or die and this will be us forever and it would be nice. But if I'm only supposed to get you to this stage and then you find you get to this stage and you feel, well, actually, I prefer things being done in this way and I want to work with these people and I want to do this, which doesn't necessarily align. I'm like, that's no problem. It's really important for an individual to be able to prove themselves right. I think that's way more healthy than trying to prove someone wrong. I am prophetic, right? I can see things before they happen. And I've got a good idea of now what it takes to get to the place. And it's really difficult when people don't see that in the same way that you do, because you can see it really, really clearly and they don't. And having to come to terms with the fact that they can't necessarily see how their behavior affects what will come down the line is a difficult thing to do, but you can only hopefully point them in the direction, and not take responsibility of it. And it is hard because it's emotional like a breakup. It is really, really difficult, because you have hopes and dreams based on what you can see. But being able to take the step back and being able to go, like, I've done my part is how I've been able to kind of get through it, I would say. Recently, like 2-3 weeks ago, an artist that I'd met 15 years ago and was managing 15 years ago rings me and goes, I want to apologize because I now realize what you were trying to do. And I'm now at a place where I've got the self-worth and I'm now running a business and I now understand things. And they're like nearly 30 and they're like, I get it now. I just didn't believe in myself enough at the time. And it's like, why couldn't you all got that 15 years ago? But like, it was their own journey that they needed to go on. And I'm glad for them that they have. But it is really tough when it's like, you just need to put that over there. And they're like, nope, put it over here. It's like, just put it over there. It's like, nope, I'm putting it over here. Like, and it's, I don't like you because you keep telling me to put it over there. And this is what I want to do. And you're like, all right then. There. Over there didn't work. Really strange that, but it's people's own journeys. You have to let them do their own thing.